Sit back, it's time to get groovy. Question, do you remember that movie?
Welcome back to Remember That Movie. I am the third Alejandro Rosa on IMDb.
And I am Steve Johnston, and I am not on IMDb.
And we're back with another movie and another episode. For this particular one, it was Steve who decided what we were going to be doing. So tell us, Steve, what movie are we covering today?
Today we are covering the 1977 animated version of The Hobbit, produced by Rankin and Bass. Now, before we get into The Hobbit specifically, how familiar are you with the works of Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass?
It's such a great question, and the answer is, who?
Really?
Yeah, really. I had no idea who you're talking about. I thought
really?
you were going to say, are you familiar with Tolkien? And I'm like, well, yes.
Oh, no.
And then you're like, are you familiar with these two people? And I'm like, no. No.
Like me. Like me, you were a child once. Yeah.
I was.
And you have children now.
I do.
Around Christmas time, do you ever watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Yes, I have.
Santa Claus is Coming to Town, perhaps? Frosty the Snowman.
Yes.
The cartoon. So you are familiar with the works of Rankin and Bass, you just didn't realize it. Arthur Rankin Jr. worked as an art director at ABC in the 1940s. And while there, he met and befriended Jules Bass, who was working as a copywriter. And then in 1960, they split away from ABC and formed their own studio and began to produce animated things. It began with some commercials, and then they did a television series based on The Wizard of Oz. And then they broke into what they're probably most well known for, the seasonal holiday specials, beginning with what I'm assuming is their most well-known one, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And over the years, they did a large number of this type of work. And they also did a handful of specials that were not Christmas or holiday related. And one of those happened to be The Hobbit. Arthur Rankin loved the work of Tolkien, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And so he decided we would like to make an animated version of these stories. And there is sort of a weird glitch in the copyright matrix at this time, because in 1977, when this came out, The Hobbit was technically in the public domain in the United States. But that year, the president signed a new copyright law, which meant that in 1978, it was back under copyright again and no longer in the public domain. So they managed to sort of squeeze this in kind of a weird way, which I thought was kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Romeo Muller was a writer who worked for Rankin and Bass's studios, and he was the one who adapted the story of The Hobbit into the screenplay. And then their in-house composer, Maury Laws, composed all of the music that you heard played throughout the film. I do not know if you noticed, but in the opening credits, Tolkien himself is credited as being as having written the lyrics. Because all of the songs, except for the opening one, are musical adaptations of poems that appear within the book, The Hobbit. Rankin and Bass actually went to Tolkien's estate and got their blessing to use the poetry in the lyrics for the music, which, again, I thought was kind of cool. It's always neat when you have someone working on a project who is a fan of the source material, because they treat it with a certain amount of reverence that you might not get otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this, because you haven't told me about this yet. We're going through the backstory, which is very cool, but what's your backstory with this film?
Oh, we hadn't gotten to us, had we?
Nope.
I sometimes forget that is a thing that we...
It's a thing.
That we do.
And I'm curious because, yeah, this was your choice. So what is your history? What is your backstory with The Hobbit?
The one other thing about this movie that I want to sort of bring up right at the beginning, did you notice the aspect ratio of it?
No.
No, you did not. Okay.
I didn't.
Had you taken notice, you would have seen that it's in a 4:3 aspect ratio. It was very blocky. And the reason for that is that this is a slight departure from our usual fare in that this was not a theatrical released film. This was a made-for-TV movie. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
That is where I saw it. It was playing on a network one afternoon on a weekend. And my dad said, "Oh, I remember this." We popped a VHS cassette into the VCR and recorded it, and it became kind of an oft-viewed cartoon during my younger years. And I was just very enthralled by it. I had never seen anything like it, in part because of the art direction and the art design that went into it. And also, it was really kind of my first introduction into the realm of fantasy, at least that I recall. And it was definitely my first introduction to Tolkien. So this was just an amazing experience when I was younger that I very much enjoyed. And I thought it would be fun to revisit it and see if it held up like we usually do. Now, when I announced that this is what we were doing, and I don't know if your reaction made it into the previous episode, but you did kind of oh yeah, the knowing nod that you sometimes do. And I was curious, did that mean you had a history with this film too? Or were you at least aware of its existence?
I believe that I read The Hobbit in school at some point. I don't remember which grade, and I ended up really liking it. And then I forgot about it entirely. Then The Lord of the Rings were brought to my attention. And I never read them before. I was a grown-up, and I started reading them. And I remember vividly seeing the name Bilbo Baggins at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right.
And going, Bilbo Baggins, that sounds like someone.
Name sounds familiar.
That rings a bell. I did not connect the two for a while. I read those 3 books or whatever. Somewhere in there, I went, wait, is there another book? And then all the pieces fit together, and I'm like, oh my God. And it was great, and I thought it was fascinating. I ended up reading all of the Lord of the Rings and really liking them and watching the movies, etc. I always heard about the famous animated The Hobbit, and I never watched it. I just heard about it. It was something, and people used to say, it's great, oh, it's great, it's the best, they shouldn't have even tried to remake it or whatever, because this is the best. So my nod was like, oh, cool. I finally have an excuse to sit down and watch this. I was also very curious because of the length. As many people will probably recall, because it wasn't that long ago, we had a film series of The Hobbit, which is always funny since it was the shortest book.
Yes.
And Peter Jackson did The Lord of the Rings. He did 3 films, and they were lengthy, but they were 3 films, 1 for each book. And then they said they were going to make The Hobbit, and I was like, that's actually really exciting. Let's have this 4th film. And they said, no, we're going to make 3 films. And I said, how are you going to squeeze 3 films out of this?
We're going to add in a bunch of stuff.
We're just going to stretch it out like dough. Yeah. We're just going to stretch all these moments out as long as we can. The reason I bring that up is because the runtime for this film is less than 2 hours.
78 minutes.
Just when I saw that, even before I clicked play, I went, oh, this is fascinating. This is so short. Can you tell this story in less than 2 hours? Has anybody showed this to Peter Jackson? No? I didn't even know what it looked like. I had no idea what the visuals were going to be. All I knew was it existed, and I'd never seen a single frame of it.
So like the vast majority of Rankin and Bass productions, all of the design and recording took place in the United States, but then all of the animation was sent over to Japan. Rankin and Bass worked with a number of studios over the years. This particular one was animated by Topcraft. They worked with Rankin and Bass on a number of their works. It was The Night Before Christmas, for example. Later, they worked with them to make The Last Unicorn, which I'm assuming is on one of our lists somewhere. They would, a bit further down the line, go on to animate the first season of the TV series Thundercats.
I was obsessed with Thundercats.
So was I. Then in 1985, the studio went bankrupt, and its assets were picked up by a director by the name of Hayao Miyazaki, who with a couple of other people formed Studio Ghibli. Or Studio Ghibli, depending on how you wish to pronounce that.
Unlike our other films, I don't know if we need to have a synopsis for this film. It's The Hobbit.
But if I may, I would like to read you the back of this VHS copy because it is delightful.
Well, even though we don't need to, we absolutely will. So let's go for it.
From the back of the Warner Home Video VHS copy of The Hobbit. Again, unknown as to who exactly wrote this, but kudos to you, whoever you were. The place is Middle-earth. The time is long ago when man shared his days with elves, wizards, goblins, dragons, heroes, and hobbits. Bilbo Baggins is a hero and a hobbit, a roundish, peaceable homebody who sets off on a dangerous quest, even though adventures make hobbits late for dinner. The adventure begins when the great wizard Gandalf enlists Bilbo's aid in retrieving a fabulous treasure stolen from friendly dwarves. All Bilbo must do is brave dark forests, towering mountains, hobbit-eating trolls, a slimy golem, gigantic spiders, a flame-breathing dragon, and more terrors that would alarm any hobbit who'd much rather be home eating buttered muffins. But reluctantly, off Bilbo goes, so dragons beware.
I think that is part of the charm of The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
It's the story of the reluctant hero.
Yes.
Who just stumbles into greatness, if you will, while always wanting to run the other way. I think that's why I find the character Bilbo Baggins to be unbelievably charming, because he doesn't want this. He didn't mean to sign up for this. He just wants to go home. I think we had that when we did Willow. He just wanted to go home. He didn't want to do this. He's not trying to be a hero. He doesn't want tales written about him. But I think Bilbo is more of a complainer than Willow is.
Yes.
I'm just like, I don't want to be doing this, and what's going on with this, and I can't just go home.
It's like at no point does he ever say no. No, I know. I'm going.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? I think that my younger self would have probably been like, "What's wrong with you? Go on an adventure and do all these cool things." And now myself now is like, "No, I kind of see what he's saying.
Totally get it."
Have you seen his real estate? It's beautiful. He has a garden, and he has a fairly carefree life. I also would find my garden at twilight absolutely charming. Had I a garden, why would you ever leave the Shire? Seriously. It makes total sense to me now. But I know that as a child, I did not.
As a child, I was like, oh, no, this is adventure. Let's go. Let's do it.
This animation style reminded me of one thing that predates Thundercats. And that was He-Man, the original He-Man. The animation style reminded me of it. Also, when we got to the land of men, and we had the Bard or whatever his name was, he looked a lot. His build was very much a He-Man-esque character.
Yes, yeah, I could see that.
I watched this on Amazon Prime, and I feel like, was there something cut out at the beginning? Because it just goes right into it.
No. This I can tell you from my memory of way back when. Yeah, this film hits the ground running and never stops.
There's just no pause at the start. The narrator just starts talking.
Yes.
It's a book, and we're zooming into the book, and they just go. And it sounds like we should have started this like a minute ago, or am I late to the movie? I took it back to the beginning because I thought I'd missed something. And then I watched it again, and I was like, oh no, okay. This is just how we're just going to go.
This is just how we're going to go.
Started with a wonderful narrator and a book. I'm a real sucker for that sort of thing. Like, let's do a fairy tale. That's how you start a fairy tale. I love that.
We're fairly quickly going to have to get into the subject of the music. Because right off the bat, Gandalf arrives, the dwarves arrive, and then the dwarves are singing. And it is only after that they introduce Bilbo to the contract and what they want him to do that we get the opening titles and the opening credits. When I was younger, loved the music. I thought it was an integral part to the movie. You could not have one with the visuals without the music in the background. I still remember most of the songs. What did you think of the music as a whole? Well, how did you feel? Because one of the interesting observations that people made when this first came out is that, oh, they've taken The Hobbit and made it a musical.
I don't think it is, though. It's a movie that has music in it. And yes, there's a lot of music. For a musical, typically people start singing and it moves the plot along, hopefully. And you don't really get that in this. Now, I will say that I did notice at some point I went, wow, they've put a lot of music in this.
What stood out to me were like the 2 or 3 times when the music stops.
Yeah.
Every other part of the music, there is a theme playing in the background, whether it's the goblins, the dwarves, Roads, which is a beautiful song. But then there were once or twice where it's like the music all cuts out and you're like, oh, what's happening?
I liked the music. I felt that it was, I think I described it as definitely made in the late 70s. There's definitely a vibe of that. It doesn't sound like it's medieval or anything like that. It feels very 70s in its sound, in the style of music that it is, which was not bad. The one thing that I recall from Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, when we had the dinner at Bilbo's house, and they start singing about the Misty Mountain, because in the Peter Jackson one, they really went for it with a kind of new version of that song that is so good and so moving. And so it was fun to listen to like a lighter version, like not that the subject matter was lighter, but just the delivery was much lighter.
We then get the opening credits, during which we have Glenn Yarbrough singing The Greatest Adventure, the theme for the movie, and a song that I loved when I was younger, and now that I am older and actually pay attention to the lyrics, it hits a little harder, quite frankly. In particular, the bit about, what are the lines?
Now remember, Steve, only you have obsessively listened to these songs. The rest of us have no idea what these songs are.
That is true.
You're acting like we're in this journey with you, but we are not. We just got here.
Did you not listen to the beautiful lyrics? You should have.
I listened to them, but I didn't put them to memory. I was just like,
Okay,
they just
fair-
went in
fair
passing, you know? I was just like, okay, that's cool.
The whole theme of The Greatest Adventure is essentially get up and get going. Stop dreaming, start doing. It's time you stop dreaming and wasting the day. A man who's a dreamer and never takes leave, lives in a world who's just make-believe. He'll never know passion, never know pain. Who sits by the window will one day see rain. Not that those words had any particular impact on me.
I'm super impressed that you just popped that from memory.
I really, really like that song.
I think you have proven that.
Because we're dealing with a lot of voice actors, I don't know how in-depth you want to go into the cast, but were there any names that stood out to you?
I made 2 notes.
Excellent.
Number one, John Huston?
John Huston, yes.
Huston. I always get it wrong. I think in every episode he's ever come up, I say his name wrong.
He has been on the podcast before. He was the narrator for The Black Cauldron.
And was he in another one as well?
No, I think The Black Cauldron was the one I remembered him from.
The other thing that made me laugh, that I had to make a note of it, because the credits are coming, they're listing everybody's names, and then there was one name that did not have a last name. It just said Theodore.
Theodore.
And I'm like, who the hell is Theodore? And why does he only go by his first name?
Because that is his stage name. And believe it or not, he's been on the podcast before as well. Though I don't remember if he made the final cut of the episode. He's a German-born American actor. Went by Theodore or Brother Theodore as his stage name. And he played the man on the street in The Third Man.
Okay. Well, I have no idea.
He voiced Gollum.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering who did that voice.
John Huston, I should have mentioned, is Gandalf.
Oh, okay. I was trying to figure out who he was. And then for a while there, I was like, maybe he's Gollum. But no, he's Gandalf. That makes sense.
I'm actually a little surprised that you didn't at least raise an eyebrow at the name Otto Preminger. Famous German director, apparently actor as well. I did a double take when he showed up on screen.
That would require me to know who that is.
There is no judgment, because the world of movies is vast, but it does surprise me, though, that you had not heard of Otto Preminger.
Sometimes Steve and I are on like the same line of our experience with films and all of that. And every once in a while, those lines just go this way. One goes to the left, one goes to the right. And so I have a catalog of weird stuff that he's never even heard of. And he has a catalog of stuff that I've never heard of. And we both end up being surprised that the other has never seen a film or heard of its existence. But if we're lucky, he'll quote one of the songs again that he knows from memory since he was a little boy.
We should mention Orson Bean, who is an American actor and provided the voice for Bilbo. Anyone who is a fan of animation from this era will probably recognize the names Conread, Paul Frees. There's one other person that I absolutely must mention when I saw his name, and that's Thurl Ravenscroft. And I mention him because, number one, that is such a cool name. And secondly, he just provided a goblin's singing voice, the very low baritone singing voice.
Yes.
And he is famous for a number of things, but the ones I think you would find interesting are that for 50 plus years, he convinced kids to eat Frosted Flakes by declaring, "They're great!"
Tony the Tiger. I bought a lot of Frosted Flakes thanks to him.
He also sang a song during a Christmas special, went uncredited at the time, I believe, but if you've ever seen How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the original animated version, he is the one who sings, "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch."
Don't sue us. Yes, that's awesome. Maybe it was too short.
Was it 6 seconds?
Yeah, right? Something like that. What a great voice. What a great voice.
And then from there, we just get into essentially one adventure right after another. As you mentioned earlier, this hits the ground running and just goes. There is very little breathing room, which, when I was younger, I appreciated. I liked that we went from adventure to adventure to adventure. Now that I'm older, I might have slightly different feelings about that, but we'll get there eventually. How familiar were you with The Hobbit?
I read it when I was really, really young. I feel like I didn't reread it when I read The Lord of the Rings. It's definitely one that I would reread now, and I thought about it after watching the movie. I'm like, I should reread that.
I had the same thought because I read it in college in one afternoon, which, if you can read a book that way, I highly recommend because you get you remember details from like the first chapter having finished the book in the same sitting, and it's a very pleasant experience, I find. But I haven't read it since, and so as I was watching, I was trying to remember, okay, how accurate is that to the book? What liberties did they take? The nice thing is that reports are that they didn't add anything extra, but they cut quite a bit out.
I felt like even watching it, I could tell, even though I have a vague recollection of the book, it wasn't like one thing after another that fast. I feel like there were other bits in the middle, but I understand the need to cut it.
The difficulty with doing a movie like this is that it's difficult not to try and compare it to other things, to the book, which it's been too long for either of us for us to go, oh yeah, I remember this from the book and this was different. Now, you have seen Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, yes?
I have.
I have not.
Well, you saved 12 hours of your life, so you're good.
And this film is the reason why. When I heard, oh, Peter Jackson's making The Hobbit, that sounds good. How many films is he doing? No. You can tell this story in 78 minutes. You don't need 6 hours worth of movie.
My biggest frustration with that film series was you told this story in 3 movies. None of them are great. And I say that not disparagingly, just like they're fine, but they're not memorable. And I wish you would have made one really good movie. I think I would have remembered that.
I could even see, having watched this one with its short running time, I could even see maybe stretching it into 2.
He did 1 movie for each book of The Lord of the Rings.
That is true.
And those are thick. They have a lot to say. Not thick, they're dense as far as like the information.
He did cut some stuff out from The Lord of the Rings, though.
You're not going to do a Tom Bombadil monologue, are you?
No, I am not going to do a Tom Bombadil.
No, that's what my wife is for. She,
Oh,
she's
I would love to hear her Tom Bombadil monologue. That would be epic.
unbelievable. Where the hell is Tom Bombadil? But yes, you're right. It is difficult not to compare this. Whether it's the books, which, like you said, we can't do because we just don't remember it enough,
Not
or
with
the
yeah.
movies where only one of us has watched it. And I
Yeah.
will go ahead and tell you that I probably remember the first one a little bit more than the other two because, again, love Peter Jackson, think he's brilliant. I kind of found them a little forgettable. It felt like you were watching a lot of the same stuff after a while,
Right.
which is frustrating because Martin Freeman is brilliant as Bilbo. I think he's great. And I think he would have been great in one movie.
Let me ask in broad terms then.
Okay, let us paint broadly.
We're going to paint broadly here. Character designs.
Okay.
What did you think of the designs of the dwarves, of Bilbo, of Smaug in particular? And I blame this movie because for 30 plus years, I thought it was pronounced Smaug.
You know what? That's always been the joke, right? Is it Smaug? Yeah. Is it Smog?
Officially, it is Smaug.
You know what? I think it feels like of the time. The animation design is very much of the time. It felt like some of the cartoons that I watched growing up definitely had that feel. Even how they had Smaug with his eyes as he was looking and it looked like he had headlights.
Yes. The search beams. Yeah.
That was a very old style kind of cartoon animation. There was a lot of that. I found it interesting, again, because I've seen so many designs from the now, right? Even if you think Lord of the Rings and the orcs and so to see like, oh, what was their version of this? Shay and I did have a great conversation when I said, so the dwarves though, they look very different.
Yeah.
And definitely, at least for our main guy, not as hot.
No, definitely not.
It was very interesting. But it also felt like, oh, right, because this is probably how they're actually described. This isn't Hollywood's version of them.
Right.
I liked the designs. I thought they were good and creepy at times. The weirdest one were the wood elves.
There are a number of people who agree with you that their design's a little...
It's just weird. But again, it's a cartoon, so I can kind of give him a little bit of license for that, you know. I do have to point something out here because I wrote it down. Steve, can you tell me why is the head of the elves so very, very British? What accent was the king of the wood elves?
So going back first to Elrond, I do not have an answer as to why he was very posh and very British. I think their approach was, all right, he is very old, very wise, has seen a lot throughout his years, and therefore would have this air of nobility and British upper crust about it. I don't know. That's just my guess.
Yeah.
The Elf King's accent is Austrian because that is Otto Preminger.
You know what's funny? And again, this is probably because of having watched The Hobbit. It surprised me that Bilbo had an American accent. I don't know why. I expected him to have a British accent. Everyone's supposed to be British. Come on now. Everyone in the Shire is British. There was one particular line that I loved, and it goes back to the contract. Right,
okay.
Which I thought was very organized. They're at Bilbo's house. They're like, okay, you're going to join our party.
Yeah.
And I just assume this is a handshake deal or whatever, but they pull out a contract, which I loved. The contract covers profits, traveling expenses, and funeral expenses if necessary. Or
if required or something like that.
Yeah, which made me laugh a lot. And later in the movie, when he's like, I don't want to do this or whatever, and he says, I couldn't argue. My contract is vague on certain points.
Yes. There was a line from Gandalf that I particularly enjoyed when they're at the edge of the forest of Mirkwood and he is leaving. And he hands Bilbo a quill and scroll saying, oh, keep a journal of everything that you do and everything that happens so I can point out your missteps. I will be grading this later, and I will tell you where you went wrong.
Every time they were in a jam, Gandalf would just appear and save them.
Yes.
That made me laugh. It's like, oh, here comes Gandalf again.
One of the things I found myself wondering was, are the dwarves actually this inept in the book? Because they do not come off well.
Don't.
Thorin in particular, he is very good at making speeches when things are going well, and then is just a man of inaction when things are going badly. He is saved either by Bilbo or by Gandalf, and then he's back to being kind of puffed up and blustery again. The scene at Lonely Mountain, once Smaug has been killed, where it's the 13 dwarves. It's like, oh, there's a couple of armies down in the valley below us. Well, we'll fight them. It's a matter of principle. It's like,
But you're gonna die.
yeah, there's like 5,000 of them, 13 of you.
Bilbo's like, this is ridiculous. Completely objective voice saying, there's a very easy way to solve this problem that we're having. I think we can all agree. We can all see that, right? Like, let's just solve this. This is super easy. We get to that moment, and we get to the armies. And I was very amused by it. It's like, what? It's 3 armies? No, what? That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, no, wait, 4 armies? 5 armies? And at some point, he's like, you know what? Screw this. I'm out.
I'm done.
Puts on the ring and hides.
I very much liked how Bard, who is leading the humans, the Elf King, and Thorin are all getting ready to just try and slaughter one another, and Gandalf appears and saying, goblins are coming. They've brought wargs. And the 3 of them turn to each other and go, oh, my friend, oh, my brother, king under the mountain, let us all join together and work to defeat our common enemy. It's like 2 minutes ago, you were at each other's throats. That is fantastic. I love it.
I do have to point that out at the end of this battle.
Mm-hmm.
As we see the land just littered in corpses from the multiple armies, and it's just death, death, death. And Thorin, who we are eventually going to see die, right? It's like, oh, Bilbo, you're not a coward, whatever. And then, dead. And they cover him up and they put his sword in. And it was around this time that I went, this is a kid's movie, right?
Yeah.
What? Here's the devastation of the war and death.
When the eagles arrive, it's kind of... I'm going to use the word gruesome. It's not quite the word I was looking for, but when you see them just pick up orcs and wargs, carry them into the sky, and drop them. And they just go thump. It's like, ooh, as you say, children's cartoon.
One thing that we haven't spoken about yet, but I want to because I have to say, it was very interesting, and that was Gollum.
Oh, we did kind of skip over him, didn't we?
We were saving him.
I like that. We were saving him for later.
Gollum is interesting because, of course, thanks to Lord of the Rings, we have Andy Serkis,
yes,
who has created an unbelievably famous character now. His performance is legendary.
Top notch.
Of course, I knew, we're going to do Gollum.
Mm-hmm.
What's that going to sound like? I think if we all do our Gollum impression, we're just doing him doing Gollum, right? I mean, what is this going to even sound like? And is it going to be good? And my personal opinion is, it is good. It's creepy. It's creepy good. It's different. It's completely different. You still got the same kind of feel, right? That obsessive creature of the dark.
Yes.
I really loved it. I actually thought it was one of my favorite parts.
Nice.
Even though he was creepy as all get out.
Oh, yeah.
What about you?
Now,
what did you think?
This is fun because you got Andy Serkis first. I got Brother Theodore first.
That's right.
So this was my basis for Gollum for many, many years.
Oh.
I loved it when I was younger. And it's kind of like apples and oranges. I don't want to compare Theodore and Andy Serkis in their performances because they're taking 2 different approaches to it. I like both of them for what they've done.
I think there's room for both of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there is no superior. I think both are great. It's a very different take, and I love the fact that 2 different human beings created their own version, and they're both good.
We end with Gandalf and Bilbo riding back to the Shire, the adventure being over. And this is where Rankin and Bass took things in a slightly different direction from the book, because Gandalf implies, based on what he says, that he knows what the ring is. That is not the case in the book. Gandalf does not know at the end of The Hobbit that Bilbo has the One Ring. That's established at the beginning of Lord of the Rings. But here he hints that, oh no, you've got more adventures. You and your family are going to have more adventures coming up. And that was done in part because Rankin Bass had intended on making an animated version of The Lord of the Rings.
That was 100% what my thought was when Gandalf said what he said. And I was like, oh, we're setting this up. They're doing more of these.
Rankin was interested in doing that. He loved the books. A couple of things happened. First is that in 1976, a Copyright Act was introduced that came into effect in 1978. So by the time they got around to working on an adaptation of Lord of the Rings, it was back under copyright, and they had to deal with that. The other thing that happened is that while they were working on The Hobbit, United Artists was working with a director by the name of Ralph Bakshi, and they put out an animated version of The Lord of the Rings, which encompassed the first 1.5 books, thereabouts. Fellowship of the Ring, like the first half of The Two Towers. And
that's weird because not a hell of a lot happens in The Two Towers.
It did not do particularly well in theaters at the time. So Rankin and Bass kind of hit the brakes a little bit on their version. Rankin even said in an interview later on that he kind of realized that no, they were not in a position to tell the story in animated form to the extent that he would have liked to. It was more, they bit off more than they could chew if they were going to attempt it. But several years down the line, they did release an animated version of Return of the King, the third book. They managed to get clearance and rights in order to do it. Orson Bean and John Huston, and I don't remember if Theodore reprises his role. But at least Gandalf and Bilbo are played by the same characters. I think Orson Bean also voices Frodo in this one to carry on the Baggins line. It's not as good as The Hobbit. Rankin has even said in interviews that, yeah, it's not our best work. Now, as for The Hobbit, reviews are not going to take the same form as our usual reviews section because this was, again, not a theatrical release. People had mixed feelings. The good tended to outweigh the bad. And people would bring up a few points. Number one is that they cut out quite a bit in order to squeeze The Hobbit into a 78-minute children's cartoon. They also brought up the fact that there was some music involved, which was of the time. And what amuses me greatly is that people list these as pros and cons. The cons tended to come from people who are Tolkien fans, who are familiar with the work, and therefore are looking at this going, oh, they cut out so much stuff. Where is Bjorn? Where is the Master of Lake Town? Where are all of these other little side pieces that were cut out for runtime, or it just didn't advance the story as quickly as they would have liked? Why is there so much music and so much singing? And yeah, it doesn't sound like Middle-earth music. It sounds like 70s music with a slight bardic twang to it. And then you've got the people who praise it for exactly the same reasons, going, oh, this is cool because you took the Hobbit and you condensed it down into a nice little musical children's cartoon. This is fantastic. I count myself among the people who like it because I was the target audience. I was a child who was not familiar with Tolkien's work and was just intrigued by what I was seeing, and it got me interested. So if you're a Hobbit fan and you're looking at this going, oh, this isn't very good, I don't think this film was meant for you, or at least not in that context. It's meant to be kind of an introductory version, if you will, to get you interested, and it worked. Now, it won a Peabody Award, and it also won a Christopher Award, which I was not familiar with, but those are presented to producers, directors, and writers of books, films, and television specials that affirm the highest values of the human spirit. Having watched it again now, after many, many, many years, the only thing I really take issue with was the pace. Now that I am older, I would have liked it if certain things were fleshed out a bit more, or if we took a little more time on certain parts of the journey, but that really is my only complaint. The last thing I would like to mention, there is one song from the animated version, among the others, that jumps out at me, be it besides The Greatest Adventure or Roads. And that is Rolling Down the Hole, which is the song that plays as they're riding the barrels down the river. A couple of people on YouTube have posted the footage from Peter Jackson's film in which the dwarves are escaping on the barrels, but have replaced the music with Rolling Down the Hole, and it is chef's kiss. It's great. I think that kind of finishes up all of the notes and things that I wish to bring up and discuss with you. Any final thoughts? If not, then I will pass the baton to you and inquire as to what our next episode will be.
Hello, this is Alejandro. If you noticed that I was a little bit quiet towards the end of this episode, that had to do to a technical issue that caused my side of the conversation to vanish from the recording. So I just wanted to jump in here and say that the next episode we're going to do takes us a few years forward to 1982, to The Last Unicorn. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Please like and subscribe, and join us then for The Last Unicorn.
Sit back, it's time to get groovy. Question, do you remember that movie?